Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for Monday, September 19th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. So far, what we have is price holding in the lower distribution of the impulse move that led to the early initial sell-off, right? You had the sell-off from 2188s, dropped down into 2100, and since we snapped right back to the midpoint, but we haven't gone anywhere since, but we have traded in the lower distribution of that range. Right now, it's very difficult to call direction either way. We have our key levels established. 2144 is a very important level. 2154 to 58 is an important zone. 2188 up here is important. And then 2100 to 2103.75 is very important as well. So we just have to see how this continues to play out. I would say that if price pushes into 54 to 58 and there is a failed acceptance above that zone, that could be a quick selling opportunity for a move back to lower value at 2053.75. Any acceptance above 58.5 likely leads to a squeeze to new highs. So I think right now this is why there's such a clear pivot in this zone between 54 and 58.5, where the market is clearly battling over right now. And that's going to be the one to watch. So any failure to see any strength above this zone could be a great selling opportunity down here. Acceptance could lead to a squeeze to new highs. So that's the pivot to watch. All right, let's drop down into the intraday time frame. Here's the intraday. What we're seeing here is the previous session back here, right? Mostly a trading range day, back and forth, back and forth. And then we saw this push in after hours trading Sunday. And then we've seen it continue and push higher. VWAP sloping higher. You see value at 41.40. You see an LVN starting at about 37.5. So right now this is right in the zone here at 44.75, where the bears would want to defend, very similar to last time here. And if there's any failed acceptance above that zone, we could see a move right back down toward the weekly and daily pivot range, which would be about 21.31. That would be similar to what happened here. So right now, that's the early idea, is that bears want to defend for a response here. Pullbacks, this zone likely wanted to be defended by bulls. You could end up having a two-way or two-sided trade. Above 44.75 opens up that move to 54 to 58.5. That's going to be very important. Remember, 58.5 is the key pivot to watch. All right, let's take a look at crude oil. Here's crude. Let's bring up a daily time frame. All right, so right now crude oil is right at the apex of a developing triangle type pattern. It's not so much a triangle as I see it as more of a compression pattern, where price is just basically compressing and building energy. It's not going to be a perfect triangle every single time, but what it is doing is coiling, and that is kind of an energy building phase. And that tells us that we could see significant expansion once we do see resolution outside of this range. But before we see resolution, oftentimes you can test both extremes of the range and make it look a little sloppy before the actual expansion occurs. So right now, anything below 43 would be significant. A failure to hold 43s and a close below 43s could really lead to a retest of 39s and perhaps that downside break into the rest of these downside targets. But right now, I expect more trading range activity to occur until a breakout occurs. And the good thing here, well, short term, we have very clear resistance here, about 44.5. But right now, it's initially being defended, but that's the early pivot. Holding above that zone could get us right back into 46.69 and above. But any major rejection here, you have to watch the opposite end of the range, because a test will come and failure to hold that zone starts to lead to a break. So right now, the early zone to watch, 44.40 to 44.50. Let's drop this into the intraday now. Here's the intraday time frame. Back it out a little bit. So right now, we've had early strength. The previous session's close right here. That's Friday's close. Early strength in the 44.51 and a clean rejection off of that resistance zone, just as we mentioned. Kind of a pullback here right now. And we've just gone sideways around VWAP, very flat, chop, chop, chop. Overnight VPOC right here as well. So right now, not a whole lot. of action at the moment, but the market is testing the key zone to watch. 44.35 is the previous session's high price, and 44.50 is that resistance into that zone, right? So this is the resistance zone. Price tried to hold above there and failed and is now holding below it. So we know that this is rejection here. So bears want to reject 44.35 for a shot at seeing 43.50 and 43.35. So right now that could be, almost a one-handle drop downward, 90 ticks into that zone. So it could be important. Now any push back above that area in acceptance could try to see a move back above 44.50, but right now with the rejection at the previous session's high, the failure to gain acceptance, this could be ripe for a move right across the range into the bottom of Friday's range. Okay, let's take a look now at gold futures. Here's a look at gold. Let's bring up the daily chart with the PivotBoss pivots. There we go. So right now, nearing and approaching the bottom of that clear range, right? 1306 is what we've been talking about. We had the top of the range up here, but it's been kind of going downward now. We had a rejection above the previous session's high in a downtrending market at a pivot range and a lower value relationship. All of that implies lower prices. What I mean by lower value relationship, if I bring up the indicator here and I show the previous range, you'll see the previous pivot range was here. Now the current week's pivot range is here. That's a lower value relationship. Price closed below the pivot range for the previous week and then is now opening into it and rejecting from below. So that right there is typically a sell the rip opportunity ahead of the next push downward. So we could be looking at more weakness here to start the week. That doesn't mean that we drop all the way down. What it means is we at least are going to come down and test 1306 and get into this 1300 a little bit. And then from there we can judge to see, are we starting to build a rejection? Are we starting to see a response and a defense and do this again? Or does a failure to hold 1300 finally open up a move back to value at 1251.60? That's the big thing that we're looking for. I think the way this is opening up right now implies further weakness into 1306, and from there we got to see if there's a bottoming type of pattern that develops. If not, we could be looking at a continuation downward. All right, let's take a look now at the NQ. Here's the NQ. Let's bring up a clean chart here. All right, there we go. So right now the NQ looks quite a bit different than the ES. This one has already swung back higher. So here's the impulse move down that we got, and then we've already swung back the opposite way and have just now taken out recent highs. So just today, overnight trading, we've taken out recent highs and we continue to see an expanding type of range, right? Continue to see that expanding nature play out, and that's something we talked about down here. We could see a return right back to the midpoint, and perhaps this thing could even fling higher. We don't know. And it did. And again, it happened above these 3-day highs right here. We saw the midpoint rule come in. We knew that a pullback would likely be defended on a digestion day. And so right now we're testing those highs. So up here, given all that's happening right now, again, we could look to see if there's some sort of topping pattern that occurs above 48.40. If so, that could be a quick opportunity to fling this thing back to 47.30 and perhaps even across the range yet again. Otherwise, the next pullback could be a defense for a continuation attempt. But right now, I'll be watching 48.40 as the pivot over under. Any failure to get above that zone could be a great opportunity to swing move it back against the range. So we'll see how today continues to play out, and that could be the move early toward the middle of the week. Let's take a look at the intraday time frame right now. Here's the intraday time frame again. Price rallied here in Sunday night trading activity, rallied into 48.30. Here's the previous highs, here's the previous lows. You had a pretty little trading range the previous session. You push above it 48.20 and you rally into that 48.40 that we just talked about. You can see the high here, then it rejected, and here's a lower high at it, and now it's going down. That's very important right there. So again, that shows you that 48.40 is a rejection zone. If price were to come into that zone over multiple attempts, it could still be a selling opportunity until proven otherwise. This is the pivot to watch, 48.20. That's what I've been mentioning this whole time. If price can get above 48.20, we could squeeze. And we finally did it here. So a failure to get above 48.40 would imply a return to 48.20 for a retest. Bulls want to keep this area bid. And it might come down even a little bit lower. You can see down here the profile. So if price cannot get back above 48.40, the idea is perhaps a move into 48.10 to 48.20, and that could be an opportunity to push this thing back up. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this one. Any failure to hold 48.10 could be significant, and we could be retrying 47.90 very, very quickly. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the new week of trading. Good luck, trade well, and happy Monday.